Hello from the dung heap, everybody. These are my friends. A lot of them.
Friends.
There he is. Hi, sweetie.
Hello. Good morning, everybody.
And we're live. Hello. SPTV. Hello, here we are.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome to the dung heap.
I have been dying to visit the dung heap. I feel like it's been forever. I am thrilled to be here at the dung heap.
Thank you. Well, I looked at the first and last time, although this will be the next time that we streamed together was, believe it or not, January 18th.
Whoa.
Yeah, and you kept saying,
a hot minute.
You kept saying, I'm new. Well, now you are a staple girl and you better not go anywhere.
Well, I'm going nowhere. I tell people, I'm like, you keep showing up, I'll keep showing up. And
Awesome.
it's a thing. It's a thing.
Yes. And you're like a veteran now. So
yeah, probably not quite yet. There's so much to learn. There really is with YouTube. There's so much on the back end.
Yeah.
If all I had to do was show up and do a video, it would be much easier. But turns out there's all this other work that takes even more time than the videos. But I love learning about it because I love learning how technology works and just how to work smarter. So I've been trying to learn all the things.
Yeah, I hear you. It'll be a year anniversary for my channel in a few weeks now, June 16th. And I still feel like I have so much to learn. I don't know what I'm doing. He's teaching an old dog new tricks,
It's going great. It's going great.
So welcome. I'm excited about this. We actually streamed 4 months ago now on pretty much the same topic, but there's so much more. There's always more to dive into. And listening to you and your streams, I listen every single morning, and I keep thinking of things I want to ask you. And I got some follow-up questions and some things from our first stream. So
anything you want.
All right.
I feel like if you're going to talk about body thetans and demons, that anything goes.
Yeah. And like I just said off stream, I never could have before stayed up till 1 o'clock in the morning, writing down and listening to videos and delving into the demon thing. I would have been so scared, Now it's just like, yeah, whatever. It's part of my past. I feel like there was a win, as I would say.
It's a win. The demons are not going to get you.
No. Well, maybe they already have, So, well, you know the origin story of Zenu and the body thetans, but if you want to just give me the rundown of how that came about, and then I can kind of give you the rundown of Satan and the demons. So maybe we can compare just the actual story to begin with. So
that sounds good. I think it's fascinating that how so many different religions in their origin stories, there are similarities. And that's part of what kind of inspired us to do this, is talk about not just the differences, but also those similarities in those stories. And the interesting thing in Scientology, most people outside of Scientology will hear about the Zenu story, which is basically per L. Ron Hubbard in Scientology lore or in the Scientology doctrine, that only people who make it to a certain level on the bridge to total freedom. You have to make it so far. You have to pay so much money. You have to actually be accepted. You have to apply in a way. And if you've not done enough in Scientology, or you've done too much of things they disapprove of, you are not eligible for the operating thetan levels where you learn this. And what you learn is that 75 million years ago, there was a galactic overlord named Zenu, and there was an overpopulation problem amongst, I guess, all the planets he was busy running. And he thought, you know what? There's just too many people. being there, I guess, we might call them aliens, but, I guess we're aliens to them. But L. Ron Hubbard, that I recall in the materials I read, didn't use that word. It was people. So overpopulation, too much people. So he loaded them all up on like DC-10s, I think he said, and or something like it. And, some of them like have been frozen in ice cubes and dropped into volcanoes on Earth and blown up with hydrogen bombs. And as a result of that happening, the spirits, the souls in Scientology, it's called the thetan, would come apart from the body, and the thetans of those people attached to humans. And those are what's called body thetans. But remember, in Scientology, you never hear about this till you get approved for the upper levels and pay for them. But earlier in Scientology, in fact, not that long ago, Aaron and I did a video about A History of Man is the name of the book by Ron Hubbard. And he talks about different entities in and around the body. And I think that once you move forward in Scientology and you learn about body thetans, that Scientologists would say, well, yes, there were the entities, but then as he researched, he learned that these were body thetans. And so those are addressed on the upper OT, the operating thetan levels.
Right.
So body thetans, a few of the questions that I never got answered, it's like, okay, so if everybody on the planet has body thetans, and a crap ton of them, we're not talking 5, that like how many, like back then when this happened, how many humans were there on the planet? A lot of the stuff doesn't add up. And if you try to add up, you're just going to give yourself a headache and make you want to drink. So I try not to think about it too much.
Right. And you're not allowed to ask any questions that aren't covered in the sacred text or whatever.
Exactly. You're
it's
only
delusional
allowed,
writings.
yeah.
Right.
And you know what it looks like. You go into a confidential course room in the blue buildings where the protesters are. It's at the Advanced Organization of Los Angeles is where I did it. And it's actually where Aaron used to work as he was a course room supervisor, but not for the confidential levels. So you would go in, and when you got to the point where you could read the material, as it was referred to, you have to unplug it from a shelf, go over to a table and plug it in within a certain amount of time, or the entire building goes on lockdown.
That's insane.
Forget the fact that it's been on South Park. It's all over the internet.
Right.
Technology still does this.
Right.
Like nobody knows.
That's a major fire hazard.
They would lock it down. You plug it in like it's that confidential. When you were going to and from, when you're in Los Angeles, because like I didn't live there, so I had to fly out there, stay somewhere, and do what's called solo auditing. You're auditing yourself. You have to do it in a room that can be locked. You need at least a closet, if not a safe, to lock the materials in when you're not using them. So when you have to go from the Scientology building to where you're staying, you have to have the materials in a locked briefcase, which is then strapped to your wrist, because that's not drawing attention or looking weird at all.
It's that guy with something strapped to his wrist. Is that a bomb?
Yeah, I know. Good luck going through an airport. Because Scientologists have to travel with these confidential materials and their e-meters.
I never thought of that. That is wild. Wow. So there's a difference right there. I can tell you right off the bat that you go to I haven't seen them lately in a hotel room, but I remember back in the day, the Gideon's Bible, they were all over the place. I think it might have been King James Version, not sure. But there are so many different translations, different interpretations of the Bible. That's why you've had wars over different interpretations of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many different facets and sects, and not the fun kind, SECT, and denominations and all kinds of, whatever. So my introduction to demons was when I was about 8.5, 9 years old.
Mhm.
And yeah, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't a secret. We learned
So
one of the,
they taught you your doctrine involving demons from, like, childhood.
oh, yes,
Okay,
yes.
and you
And
use the plural demons, so there's more than one.
right. So there's Satan or the devil or
Mhm,
Lucifer, Beelzebub, whatever you want to call him, is the top, the head honcho of the demons, right?
mhm.
And there are what's called, and I'll get into that in a minute. Let me just tell you the story of how he became the devil, based on what I was taught. Okay, there could be different stories for different, brands of religions and Christianity, but I was taught based on the books of Isaiah and Ezekiel that uh, so God created everything, created all the angels, and the devil originally was an angel called Lucifer. So
Mhm.
he was called the angel of light. Well, he decided he wanted to be like God, and God don't like any copycats, right? You can only worship him, nobody else. So he rebelled against God and cast him out of heaven. Not sure where he went at first because I'm not sure if the earth was actually created yet, but
Mhm.
cast him out of heaven with, I believe it was the third of the angels went with him. So his followers went with him
Oh,
and
wow.
became demons. Yes. So not sure how many angels there were, but there became Satan and demons. All right. So he was just condemned forever and ever and ever and ever. So there's no saving the devil or the demons, right? They're evil. They're evil spirits. So they call them evil spirits as well. So one of the first scriptures I learned, besides Jesus died for your sins, that John 3:16, for God so loved the world, whatever. And then Ephesians, and I'm going to read it to you because it's a little bit wild. This is what I learned as a kid, that you were in a war, that this earth is kind of like a prison planet. It's a war planet, right?
Mhm.
So Ephesians, which is one of the books in the New Testament, says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, again. And I was taught this present darkness, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So they're after you. They're out to get you. And what do they want? Your soul.
What
So
do
they
they
don't want
do
you to go
with
to heaven.
So explain this to me. If in this belief, in the cult that you were in,
Hmm.
and in mainstream Christianity, there is a belief of demons and the devil and God and heaven.
Hmm.
But what set yours apart was really, I mean, you do, and you've shared about, like, the abuses and this extremism. It's so
Yeah.
extremist.
Yeah.
What was the plan? Like, once they get your soul, so, like, would they be like, if you did something in your group, in your cult,
Hmm.
that was, naughty or not okay,
Yeah.
like, did they think they were gonna, like, what does that mean to take your soul?
So, well, eventually, if you die physically, that's when your soul is judged, right? So,
Okay.
so they're basically want your soul forever until you die, and
Mhm.
then they get you forever and ever and ever, right? You don't go
Okay.
to heaven, but while you're here, you get tested and tempted. So supposedly, the demons as spirits will roam the earth and seeking people who they can inhabit, right? And what they do is they tempt you, they speak to you, sometimes they possess you, they're in you. And
Mhm.
so you constantly have to be, quote, pure and not give the devil a foothold, it's called. So if
Mm.
you open the door to a demon, it could be having a bad thought. It could be thinking a guy is hot and wanting to, suck
That
him
will get
out or
you a
whatever. Yeah.
demon, or it's
Oh yeah, it
opens the door to a demon?
opens up the door to demon. And I had a demon at Jezebel so many times. And
And
Jezebel was like,
Jezebel's like the floozy of the demons?
yes, the floozy demon. Yeah, yeah. Which isn't exactly biblical, but my cult turned all the Bible characters into demons, all the villains. So there are some actual demons that are talked about in the Bible, but then there's just characters that they turned into demons, right?
Okay.
So it was a fearful thing. It was something that you didn't want to be possessed, because getting getting an exorcism was not fun. It was
Mm.
not fun.
Like
You would
sex checks and interrogations in Scientology.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There were forced confessions. There were sometimes it got violent. People would lay hands on you. They would restrain you. I mean, I never faked an exorcism. Like, I was just like trembling for real. But I heard people screaming, thrashing, having convulsions, frothing at the mouth. As a young child, I saw this. So it was pretty scary.
Who would be present during these exorcisms?
So when I was little, they could happen right in the congregation with 200 people watching.
Oh, that's embarrassing. So you go to church and it's like you have a demon.
Yeah.
And you get to exercise right in front of everybody.
Yeah. And usually sadly, it usually was somebody that had mental illness that was in the congregation. So that was terrible, And then when I went to the call, it was more isolated. So they would take you in a room and they would just say, you have a demon of such and such. We're going to lay hands on you and cast it out. And they would decide, the leadership, and Marlene Sweeney, I like to say her name any chance I get because she earned it. And she would decide that, you had a demon of this or that. The thing that really broke the camel's back was when my daughter was 7 years old and Marlene decided that she had a demon of Jezebel in her, of all things.
The
7 years old.
She's
Yeah.
7. Wow.
Yeah. And proceeded to lay hands on her and brought her into a room, which I never should have let her go in that room. I will regret it for the rest of my life, although my kids have totally forgiven me, but it's awful. It's awful. But that was the beginning of the end. It did take 2 more years to get the hell out of there. But that was enough. When you see your kids starting to get inflicted with that crap.
Yeah. So within the person, did you have certain people in your group who were trained to do these exorcisms, or could anybody do them?
Well, you'd have to be anointed. You would have to be, quote, pure yourself so that the demons wouldn't jump on you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but now it just sounds so ridiculous. Yeah, sorry, I'm blurry. I moved so much, I got blurry. I'm like, but no, they would warn you too. They would say, you need to repent and not let them back in, or they'll bring 7 of their friends.
Was it always 7?
Well, I think a legion was 7. I'm not sure. There's this guy in the Bible who obviously had some mental health issues and would live in a cemetery. And Jesus came up to him and he was afraid of Jesus. He said, "Don't come to torment me." And he's like, "What's your name?" And he said, "My name is Legion because there are many of us." So he cast the demons out, all the demons, I don't know how many there were, into a flock of pigs. Is it a flock or herd? A herd of pigs. And a flock of pigs. And they herded themselves off a cliff and drowned in a lake. So demons are apparently like ice then.
Lice.
Oh, lice. Oh, sorry. I can't see. My glasses are fogged up. Menopause. I get all like sweaty.
I hear you. I got 2 fans going right now, girl.
I know my fan's a little far away from me. So.
It's the lights too, because I have so many lights going. You could see it from.
That's true. Me too. Whoa. Well, talking about hellfire too. I mean,
yeah,
God.
that's right.
Yeah. So there's some attributes of demons that I wanted to put out to you to kind of compare with body thetans and see what you think.
Sure.
Okay. So the first one I wanted to ask you is, like you're talking, you asked me about the Legion. Does everyone get issued a certain amount of body thetans, or how does that work? How many body thetans do you have?
That's the thing. I don't know, but I know there's a lot, because when you do operating thetan level 3, which is the first one you do, you get rid of these body thetans or groups of body thetans, but you do that till you feel like you're done and you think that you're done. It seems like you're done. You believe it. But then when you start the next operating thetan level, you find out, well, for operating thetan level 4, it's about drugs and how drugs have affected these body thetans. And then there's more and there's more. And then you think you're done. And then again, you get to operating thetan level 7 and like, there's more. And apparently it's only there where on operating thetan level 7, where it takes years of solo auditing and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to rid yourself. Here's the other thing. You are paying for this, yet you're doing all the work. You do go in to, like, you go to Flag and every 6 months you get an interrogation, and you then get rid of your body thetans. But then I heard that when you reach operating thetan level 8, which is the highest level in Scientology, that you find out something like you've been like making up the body thetans the whole time, kind of like with your reactive mind. I
Oh
forget
my God.
exactly what it is, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what it is. I know I'm not getting that totally right.
I remember hearing, I can't remember if it was Mary Kahn or one of the OT8s that said that it was kind of like, now you're going to find out who you really are. Like that
Yeah,
wasn't really real, but now in OT9 or whatever, but it doesn't exist.
yeah, it's very much, and the difference too with Scientology and body thetans is it was never like I would never have looked at them, when I believed that and thought that they were anything like demons, because even though they affected an individual, the belief in Scientology is that they affect an individual in a multitude of ways. It was more of like, you know, and here's the interesting thing. And you know what? I would love to talk to some other people who did the operating thetan levels, because one, you don't get to talk about it when you're on it.
Right.
But I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, were your body thetans, like, did you have ones that were real a-holes? Like, I didn't feel that was the case. It was more like a compassion of, we're going to be able to help free you so that you can go
Right.
do what you want to do. Because body thetans were thetans that if I'm a thetan and they're a thetan, they're just one stuck to the body. So they're less aware. Sometimes they can be asleep. And that's supposedly why you don't always find them on the lower levels. It's just so funny when you talk about it out loud.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And but I never saw them as like, oh, these demonic things,
Enemy.
or
Right.
yeah, it was just you were, more helpful, like fly free, little one.
No,
At least that was my experience.
were you told that you somehow deserved them or pulled them in? Or because like with demons, it was like you deserve it because you opened the door. You were
You
out
opened the
ethics or
door.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly, no, there's not a lot that went into explaining that part. It's like L. Ron Hubbard came up with it, and he came up with the process and these what he refers to as incidents. And there's an incident that you run the body Satan through.
Right.
You
Something
have
about a
them look.
chariot or something?
Yeah, it's a weird incident. It's not explained why it's this incident, but there's like, I don't remember it exactly, but it's like a chariot goes by, there's a loud snapping sound, something else happens, and then like nothing, and somehow that frees them. I'm a little out of practice on my body Satan removal because
Me
it's
too.
been.
My exorcisms are, a little
Yeah,
bit of a
yeah,
blur
I'm not
too.
totally on top of it, but and then the idea being is that, yeah, you free yourself of those, and I could see how that if you believe that, like, when I was doing those levels, the biggest win I got on it was being done. Like, it was grueling to do at times, which now it makes sense because it's like you're looking for something that I don't believe now
Right.
is there. How I looked at it, and this is where I feel like there's a lot of room for interpretation. You would never voice this interpretation
Right.
to other people because you're not allowed to discuss your auditing like that in Scientology, especially on the upper levels. You don't even sit down with somebody like another counselor or auditor and talk about it. You might get auditing in a type of repair, but you're not having, when you're having Scientology auditing with two people, you have the auditor, and I would be the person getting the auditing. So I'd be called a pre-clear or a PC. Even after you're clear, they still call you that. There's kind of like a wide area there where you pretty much, like, your auditor's never going to tell you that, oh, that didn't happen. You could tell your auditor, you could be running an incident of like, oh my gosh, I now, you know what? Like, let's say this lifetime you get arthritis in your hands and it really hurts. And you go earlier, similar, you got some injuries as a kid and it's not
Right.
going. So you got to go even earlier. So you go to previous lifetimes. And maybe you were doing something and your hand got stabbed, and then you go earlier and then you go, oh my gosh, you know
Jesus.
what? I was nailed up on the cross. And I'm telling you, there were several Scientologists who thought that they were Jesus in a past life. Even though you're not supposed to talk about it and tell people that, they did anyways. And the auditor will not say, you're my
Everybody's
third
Jesus.
Jesus today. I know this didn't happen. they will just let that go. That's right. And your wallet opens and you're broke. Yeah, totally. And so
Wow.
some of it, like for me, my interpretation of it was
All
that,
right, got blurry
okay,
again.
oh, my
I gotta fix that.
interpretation was that these were things or ideas or concepts that I had that didn't serve me. So when I looked at it,
Right.
I looked at it like, because you would trace it back to like, okay, which body thing's causing that issue. You might look for areas where you have pain or pressure, right?
Right.
So there were some things I realized, but I realized it was because I was looking at it more through the lens of not them being body thetans, but as maybe concepts or decisions that I had made somewhere along the road that I realized just don't serve me today, which is actually not how Scientology works. So I wasn't, but this is the thing. Nobody's like, checking in that way. It's just like kind of like what my perception was of it. You have this general idea, but not in a like a demonic way. They were never able to, because if you ask a question like, well, what happens to body thetans when they leave? Anytime you ask a question in Scientology in the course room, the only answer you will get from the course room supervisor is, what do your materials state? And if your materials don't state anything
Right.
about it,
You
they
don't
might
need to
try and
know.
give you other references by L. Ron Hubbard to help you connect the dots, but they never explain it to you. They
Right.
don't sit down and go, okay, here's the deal. So 75 million years ago, I mean, I wish they did. It would be more entertaining. You have to read it. And it's in L. Ron Hubbard's handwriting, a copy of his original handwriting when he wrote these things. It's just printed in red on white paper in these, confidential packets. So
Yep.
that's how we learn about that, but not the vast majority of Scientologists will never learn about body thetans. That's why I often say, even with protesting, they don't know about that. And they're going to think that,
You
what
know.
you know isn't correct. Ask them about how much money they spent this year on Scientology, what their retirement accounts look like, stuff like that. If you want to
Yeah.
trigger them,
Right.
that's how you
Right.
do it.
Yeah, really. So I told you how the demons basically want to possess your soul. They want you to go to hell. They don't want you to go to heaven because they're pissed at God or whatever.
Yeah.
What do the body thetans want, or do they have a will? And do they, I mean, do they influence you? Do they make you sick? What is it?
They're
Like,
supposed
what
to
do
have
they
an influence on you because that's kind of what you learn as you go through it.
do?
But it's in Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard says the basic on all of this is it just that people, thetans, just want to survive, that it's all about survival and surviving.
Right.
And that because they were really mentally and spiritually messed with after they got blown up in the volcanoes, because apparently thetans between lifetimes go to what are called implant stations. See, I don't think you
Right.
guys got implant stations. You got heaven and hell. We have
Right.
implant stations where
Right.
you are reprogrammed to go back to Earth. It's almost like Scientology believes that Earth is a prison planet and that we're stuck here, and that in between lives you report to an implant station where all of the beliefs in Christianity, the beliefs in
Right.
two kids in a white picket fence, all of those things are implanted within you that you then have a desire to do that. That's why in Scientology, they justify not having a family this lifetime because you've had many families. You can
Right.
have families later. But L. Ron Hubbard always said, we have this short time in eternity to turn things around. That's why Scientologists and Sea Org members are willing to suffer in many ways,
Yeah.
because they see that suffering in, they kind of almost martyr themselves in that way, that I'm giving up having children, or, like, I guess if you would become a priest or a nun, right, in the Sea Org, you're not going to have any money, you're not going to have things like that, but you're doing it because we have this limited amount of time to turn things around.
Right. In Christianity, it's more like you get your reward in heaven. So you can, make sacrifices here, and it says in the Bible, it's appointed unto man once to die, and after this the judgment. So you don't come back. You die once, but then you're judged. Either you go to heaven or you go to hell. So
Yeah.
this is like a teaching grounds. This is you're also we were called strangers or pilgrims. This isn't your home. Your
Ah,
home
so
is in eternity.
where's
So you're just
eternity?
heaven or hell.
Okay, so you have to go to one or the other. How do they
Yes.
explain, like, ghosts?
Good question. Um, well, the occult is something that they talk about as far as ghosts go. Although there are some um instances in the Bible, but it's usually has to do with what they call witchcraft or
Mhm.
uh conjuring up. I guess it's either a demon or I'm not sure. There's all kinds of schools of thought. Believe me, there's just it all depends on what you think. You can kind
Yeah,
of make up your own. You can make up your own religion based on the Bible. I mean, look at Jonestown.
yeah.
I mean, Jim Jones was actually a ordained by my childhood denomination. Yes, the Assemblies of God. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, charismatic Christians in the 70s were. That's when I grew up. Actually, when I went into that church, that was the year I heard about Jonestown,
Mhm.
and it was the same denomination. Yeah, believed in, speaking in tongues and healings, and a lot of them were fake. I'm just saying, my opinion. The healings and the jumping up and down and the slaying in the spirit and all that, and he
Yeah.
believed in all that.
So much of
So
it, I think, whether it's, Scientology, body thetans, or entities and, demons in your cult, it seems like a common denominator of a lot of that is you're creating the complexity in which it create. If you can
yeah,
create enough complexity,
hmm
now you have a religion,
yeah,
now
right.
you have something that you need people to interpret for
Interpret
you.
for you.
So I feel
Yeah.
like these cult leaders are good at creating that complexity and making themselves as the only source of the information to be able to
Mhm.
understand it. And
Yep.
that's why they limit us learning about anything else or from anybody else,
Mhm.
because we start to realize that one of the biggest things for me in leaving Scientology was coming to the realization that I pull the strings.
Yeah.
That for me, my personal belief is that I don't have it all figured out or all the questions answered, but that if I want to be happy, life is not about being perfect or having everything perfect all the time, or even being unicorns and rainbows
Right.
all the time. I personally now believe that life is about learning and that we go through experiences, and those experiences are dictated based on what we as individuals need. We as individuals, if we knew what we needed, we probably would have figured it out a long time ago,
Right.
but we
Yeah.
don't know what we need, and I know in
Mhm.
Christianity, the pieces of it that have appealed to me, if people have talked about how this kinda like having this divine plan, or that God has a plan for you,
Mhm.
in that, God or a higher power would know what you need more than you would, and I'm not like, I welcome that as a belief with other people,
Right.
but I'm not my personally, I don't believe in the one or the singular, there being like one God like that. I think that there's a higher power, but I'm not 100% sure if it's not, mind leaning, it's almost like just a higher consciousness, which I could see as being, could be something like a God,
Mhm.
but that we all have the ability to, if we can learn from what we're experiencing, then nothing's really, bad or wrong. And I think that's the mistake we make as humans is life throws all kinds of things at us. You can't find a person, you can't throw a rock without hitting somebody who has either lived through some tragedy or it's
Yep.
coming. It hits and it touches all of us. So if we're all here together and we're all going through these crazy things, or we have or we will, maybe we're all supposed to do it together. Maybe that's the idea. This might sound funny, but I had this realization the other day during window time. I literally
Mhm.
just stare at the trees. And I'm looking outside in this marshy area and I'm thinking, you know what? There's an entire ecosystem back here. And the trees depend on the water, they depend on the sun, the birds. Everybody's doing a job in this ecosystem. So these trees can grow and be strong. And the trees shade humans and they provide food and shelter for even other creatures. It's an entire ecosystem that's set up to heal and grow itself. And it hit me, we are like that. The problem with
Mhm.
humans is it takes us a while sometimes to figure out what our ecosystem is. My ecosystem was not in
Yeah.
Scientology and in the
Yeah.
Sea Org. So I didn't thrive. Things went horribly for me. But it's like when you figure out and you realize, and for me, going through what I've been going through lately and opening myself up to the idea of letting other people help me and leaning on others, I'm like, holy crap, that's my ecosystem. Everything I need is already here, even if I
Right.
can't see it. Just because I can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there. That my
Right.
ecosystem, when I'm living my life in alignment with what I value, that the ecosystem will provide what it is I need, even if I can't see it. So I feel it's like that we all have this ecosystem. And when we can find ones where I can survive well in yours and you can in mine, and people where we can jive that way, we spend more time together. And if you've ever lived with somebody or and sometimes it's even siblings, you don't need the same type of ecosystem. And then there's clashing. So I think basically it's something like that.
No, that makes absolute total sense. That's the realization that I came to was it's okay to trust my own intuition.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
I think that a lot of this dogma and doctrine and foo-foo new stuff
yeah.
is designed to get you to doubt yourself and to,
Mhm,
like you said, to depend on someone else to interpret life for you. And
mhm.
also to it's funny, the one of the main similarities that I saw between the demons and the body thetans was this idea is that you have this invader inside of you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
however you have to get rid of it, right,
Mhm,
is how you get rid of it according to what they tell you. But if they can get you thinking there's something wrong with you, you have a reactive mind in your case. I had a sin nature, so there was something wrong with me.
yeah,
And I've got these invaders inside of
yeah.
me. So you're constantly running in circles
Mhm.
trying to,
Yeah,
reprogram your mind, trying to get these,
yeah.
like someone said lice, which I read as ice, lice off of you or inside of you or whatever, then they've got you
Mhm.
because you're not looking around and seeing you're missing out on life. And that's, it's a
Yeah,
shame. It
and
really is a
often
shame.
they'll show you, like in leaving Scientology, I look at some of the doctrines and the beliefs, and especially the ones that we had to repeat. We would do, they called it Chinese school, where someone would say something, we'd have to repeat it back over and over and over again till you just had it down.
Mhm.
We used to have to memorize sometimes pages of L. Ron Hubbard doctrine, line by line,
Yeah.
word for word. I don't even know how I did it because right now I couldn't tell you what I had for breakfast. I don't know how I did it. I think maybe I was younger and if that's all you focus on, but it also showed me that when we decide to focus on something, we usually will get it done. It's just a matter of focusing enough on it. I think we're capable of so much more. And that's one thing in a negative way that Scientology showed me is there's things that I didn't even think I could do in Scientology, but I did and I got it done. Those weren't things that were necessarily in alignment with my ecosystem, but it
Right.
proved that when I put my mind to something and I focused on it, that I could get that done. And a lot of times in that doctrine, like L. Ron Hubbard, one of the things we'd learn is L. Ron Hubbard says, and this is word for word, he says, the degree of complexity is directly proportional to the degree of non-confront. So the more you don't confront something, the more complex it becomes. That makes sense. And that's actually a universal truth that you can
Mhm.
find outside of Scientology.
Right.
The
Exactly. Yeah.
more you fail to face something, of course, the more complicated it is. The more I procrastinate about working on my taxes, the bigger the job gets. I do this to myself every year. And then when I finally sit down and focus and do it in the ninth hour, it only takes me a few hours. And I'm like, I have spent more time stressing about this, but I
Mhm.
realized recently it's because I don't understand it. And so when you don't understand something, it's easier to not face it. And then it becomes more complicated and more big and more complex. And
Mhm.
bringing things down to being as simple as they can be, I think is a key. And that helped me break free from a lot of my Scientology or occult thinking was
Right.
number one, I don't need to know everything. I don't need to have like people ask like, well, what do you believe now in terms of religion? I don't know. And maybe I will one day have one thought or one way of seeing it. Maybe I won't. I'm open
Right.
to it. I honestly today believe that it's whatever that person believes. If they believe that they're going to heaven and that is real for them, who am
Yeah,
I to say that that's not true, right?
exactly. Yeah.
I do like the Buddhists and the way they believe that you'll continue to have to come back until you learn what you need to learn, because we see that in life. You'll hear from people like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me again." Well, what's
Mhm.
happening? Well, what happened before? And there's a theme. You keep finding yourself in this situation. So the Buddhists, their belief makes sense to me. You haven't
Mhm.
yet learned from it. And you can't learn from something that you're blaming either. If you're
Right.
saying, like, I've been asked, like, oh, do you have any like animosity towards my mom for getting us into Scientology? I never have. It never even occurred to me, because I could see that my mom was doing the best she could, that what she got into with Scientology in the beginning was so much better than the life that she was living, that that was
Mhm.
seen as an improvement. So who am I to say? I think that's part of it, is if we can get better at just letting people be and let
Right.
them do what feels natural and feels good for them, why we have this need to, or we're so threatened by somebody else's belief, I think is where we get into trouble. If people want to believe still what they learned in Scientology, I
Right.
don't have an issue with that.
Mhm.
But don't
Right.
do something that's harmful to someone else. That is where I draw the line. If
Right.
it's harmful to someone else, if it's a child, children cannot consent. I think
Yeah.
even in other religions, if they learn about it and they have a choice in life later and they make that choice, that's fine.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah, and that's where I stand too, absolutely, and anyone who follows my channel knows that whenever I have certain times when I do fundy days. The other day I did fundy Sunday, talked about purity culture, which I'd like to talk to you about that sometime, because I think
Yeah.
the Sea Org had its own version of that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
when I do that, I always just make a disclaimer and
Yeah.
say I'm not attacking anyone's religion, anyone's
Mhm.
faith. I'm just saying from my own perspective in the extreme, because extremes, let's
Yeah.
face it, extremes are never good, right? So I was brought up in extreme, and then not only that, but then I joined the super serious, scary, like Sea Org type cult that was awful. I used to feel like there was something wrong with me, but then I realized that so many of my housemates and fellow door of hopers, we call this, were really literally losing their minds around me. And it was always because of us. It was always we open the door, we're sinful, there's something bad about us. Then I realized, I was like, wait a minute, maybe it's not us.
Mhm.
Maybe it's what, we are being subject to. Maybe
Yeah.
it's the abuses. Because people in the real world that didn't have the quote truth that we had,
Mhm.
they seemed way better off than us. They seemed
Yeah.
like they could function,
Yeah.
in real life. So it got to be like, wait a minute, this doesn't add up at
Yeah.
all.
It's giving over. I think when you get to the point, regardless of the cult, it's when you fully, or you're giving over control and you are no longer trusting yourself,
Yeah.
is where
Mhm.
it can go haywire. And I think it's that same thing in relationships. I think that you can be very close. Like Tony and I are very close. He can read my mind at times. But we both each still have our own, like, we think for ourselves. And if we don't agree, it's okay to say that you don't agree. But that's where
Right.
that comes in. It's just, I feel like as humans, I don't know why there's so much of that. Well, no, you need to believe like me, or it somehow threatens my belief. Or if
Right.
I support somebody in politics and you don't, you're a total a-hole. But none of it is really wrong. It just depends on where you're looking at it from. Right? For
Exactly.
one person, an experience could be horrific, but somebody else, that same experience could be fun. Going up in a stunt plane. I did that once kind of by accident. It terrified the crap out of me. Tony would have absolutely loved
Yeah,
it.
same with me and my husband. I hate
For
those
me,
little
it was
planes.
trauma.
Yeah.
I was
Right.
traumatized.
Yeah.
There were parts of it, once I gave in, once I had decided, you know what, if I die and this is the way that I go, so be it. I may as well enjoy it. I'm up here and I'm never doing this again. Then it became enjoyable and it became freeing. But again, it was that whole idea of just like not trying to control all of it. Right. And I
Right.
think with a lot of religions is we're led down this path that we have to be in control to not have that, what do you call it? That sinful mind.
Yeah, the sin nature.
Not to have the
So the
sin
fall
nature.
of man. Yeah, the
Yeah.
apple and in the
Yeah. You
garden.
have to,
It might have
yeah.
been a pomegranate. Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah.
in Scientology, like not, there's so many nots and don'ts. There's not enough. Well, then what
Yep.
are we supposed to be doing? Why don't we ever focus on that? Like whatever that is, if it's having good relationships or doing things for other people, again, doing our part in whatever your ecosystem is. We all have a part in it, no matter what. Even animals and pets do. They bring us joy. They take care of us. We, in turn, we feed them. All of it is like just this, I feel like this snow globe in a way. What do you call those things you put plants in and they live inside, even
A
though there's no
terrarium.
terrarium?
Terrarium.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like that.
Yeah.
And I think that everything that we need is already here. And it's the same thing like with, I've been going back home to Hawaii and replugging in again, reminded me of that. That's how I thought and what we believe in Hawaii, and that in the Hawaiian culture. Everything you need is there. You have to take care. You don't own the land. You're a steward of it. You need to take care of it. And to
Right.
take care of it means, doing and not doing certain things, because that is what helps your ecosystem. But when you're in life doing things that don't align with that, that's when
Yeah.
things get all messed up.
Right.
And not everybody has the same ecosystem. I might want my life a certain way. Somebody wants it a different way. We have, artists. There are people who never want to settle down. They just are happy and content to be on the move and travel all the time and do, like DOA, like doing the van life thing, that kind of a thing. There's
Yeah,
which,
I like to be surrounded by yarn, actually.
yeah. Yeah, and
That's my
that's your ecosystem. We create it on a small level or a larger level. But I think as long as we remember too, what is our part in that? Even in this community, in coming in, I wanted to I didn't want to just take up space. I wanted to fill a hole. I wanted to find out like what's needed, and then I can do that, and because it was already in alignment with what I valued, because exposing Scientology, letting people know it's a human trafficking cult, and all cults, because when you learn about one, you start to learn about all of them, which is kind of like our conversation today. The fact that I can come from what I came from and you can come from what you came from, and we realize that, oh my gosh, the beliefs might have been different, but the
Yeah,
similarities of control are totally there.
absolutely. And I feel as if the recovery also period
Mhm.
can be very similar as well. No matter what you believed in at the time, you already put those doctrines, policies, whatever aside, but the effects are very, very similar, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
We should
just
probably
learning how.
grab if some of
Yes,
these,
I was just,
questions and
yep,
stuff, and
I was just looking at that.
Blowdrill was here. He said something earlier. What was
Go
it,
ahead and
Blowdrill?
click
I
on
think it
it. I
was
gave you a
something about,
clicker.
yeah, you did. Where did it go? This is what I was talking about. True love is born from understanding, which is a Buddhist belief, and that's the whole thing that it just keeps coming back to for me. If I'm feeling like a weird way or there's some negativity, I find that if I can just talk through it with the other person or get them to
Yeah.
help me understand how you got there. And I can still love and care for that individual and completely disagree with them
Yep.
on something. It's like this, it's an amazing thing. But do you want to, I know
Yeah.
there's a bunch of
Let's go through
starred
some.
ones there.
Yeah, we can go through some. First of all, you have a new member,
Ah,
A-Rad.
way rad, way to be
We
rad. Hip hip
we
hooray.
do we do seal claps when you get a new member over
Seal
here.
claps, yeah, I do the hip hip hooray.
Hooray! A little dance. I like that. Let's do a seal clap and a hip hooray. I love it. What else? Oop, did I unstar something? I don't know what happened. Oh, what was Hubbard on? That's a good question. When
Oh,
he wrote these things,
a lot. I mean,
it was okay for him to be on something.
yeah, in the end of his life too, and in the beginning, he talks about doing, like he wrote letters to family members where he talked about popping pinks and grays, and it's like, and then his history of what he did with Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley and black magic and all of that prior to Scientology. You can't tell me that didn't play into it. That was he was a researcher. So
Right.
he would research and then put these things together and be like, yeah, I made this now. I'm going to take this from here, that from there. And that alone, like, I think we do that in life, right? You don't have
Yeah.
to just cook from one cookbook. You can use different ones. But the difference is you don't put it all together and then be like, this is the only way to cook. And
Right.
that's what cult
Right.
leaders do.
And he's took like many are called, few are chosen from I
Yep,
think
from
Book
the
of
Bible.
Matthew. He took what would Ron do? It was what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
That's so
I thought the
funny.
Christians copied that from Scientology.
I don't think so. Oh my goodness. I just want to say real quick, someone asked about my history in my cult. I do have, if you go on my channel on the playlist, this is my story. I did a in-depth 2-part interview with the late Doug Scott Kramer, who was an amazing ex-Scientologist and also a creator and just a great guy and my friend. I told him my story from start to today. And also there's a video called Cults to Crochet on Kelly Copter's channel where I focus basically on on my cult. So it was called Door of Hope. It was Pentecostal / IBLP Duggar-esque style Petri dish cult. So yeah, if you want to know more about my story, it's all there online.
Interesting.
Here we go. Free Zenu. There he is. There's Zenu. Hey there, friend. Because DC-10s are so space-worthy,
Yeah.
and glycol is what they make antifreeze out of, which is why they use glycol.
Yeah. It was,
Mhm.
that's where you realize, especially later on, that like, okay, it was definitely, because some of those things, being so born and raised in it, I don't know if you experienced this, even when you're like, okay, I know that's probably not true, but a little
Yeah.
bit is like, ooh, but what if? But then you hear things
Yeah.
like that and you realize like, no, he made that up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I was always told, like, well, you don't have to ask, you don't need to know everything now. You can ask God when you get to heaven, if you get to heaven.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was always told if I get to heaven, it's going to be by the skin of my teeth, whatever that was.
Yeah. And
So,
that's kind of almost a control mechanism too, because why can't we know? Some things we
yeah.
know or we don't know, right? But why can't even just like taking the time, if you think about things, this is something I think we don't do enough these days. And I am as guilty as anyone of this. We don't ponder enough. Got to thinking about it because of what Fluffer Squirrel UK does with her paint and ponder.
I love that.
It's just taking the time to just like sit and be with our thoughts, which is what,
Mhm.
like even window time has been becoming for me. We don't do enough of that. We don't, whereas
Yeah.
back in the day, before television, other things, even if you look at other early philosophers, Greek philosophers, they would just like sit around and have these conversations and these
Yeah.
deep thoughts. But we are so distracted by so many other things that it's so easy for us to accept that, well, you'll find out from this one source if you play your
Right.
cards right. Whereas, why couldn't I just think about it for a while? It's almost like we can tap into just like the energy of whatever. And
Mm.
eventually you kind of start to figure things out, or maybe there's a lesson in life that presents itself and it answers that question.
Yeah,
And
you know
for
when that
some, it's
happens
not
for
a
me,
bad
when
thing.
that either in the shower or when I first wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
you're still in that dreamy state, and that's where a lot of my content comes from, honestly.
Mhm.
'Cause I'll just be in this kind of like dreamy state, and I'll be wondering, like, I wonder what, emotional intelligence is,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something just comes to mind, like a concept like trust, or like one day I did fight or flight. The
Yeah.
four, I call it the 4 F's of uh of I forgot what we call it, trauma, right?
Yeah.
Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And
Yeah.
what's really funny is a lot of these things I think about, I go online and start looking at them, and they're just basic things that you can find on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
on the web, like Indeed.com, all
Mhm.
kinds of business sites, because those are things that I did not learn from being in a cult, but the outside real world are
Mhm.
characteristics
Yeah.
you kind of need to succeed in real life.
Yeah. And they're
So,
using those tools more now today. You have there where some schools, kids will even meditate and they'll teach
mhm,
meditation. And it's
mhm,
really just that quiet, reflective time. It doesn't need to
right.
be this big, complicated thing. But those are the moments when we actually do figure things out, but we've indoctrinated ourselves to believe that and I am so guilty of this, that you have to have something going on. I know for me, that is a challenge to stop and have that meditative time. But when I do it, it doesn't take a lot of time and it just feels like it just completely resets me. It's like you can just put down the stuff that you're carrying and
Yeah.
you put it down and you realize like, "Oh, wait a minute. I didn't even need to be carrying that."
No, it's so true. It's
Yeah.
so true. And I used to think in, well, you talked about the memorization. I used to think in scripture verses, So even when you were saying that, I was like, oh,
Ooh,
cast your burdens on the
yeah.
Lord because he cares you. And I'm like, you know what? I can just cast my burdens on. I can just throw it overboard.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it. Like I really grew up without a mom and from the time I was 5. And this Mother's Day, I did a stream about what does mother mean to you? And it was just beautiful. People
Yeah.
talking about, there's some tragedies and people that also grew up without moms or lost their mom. It doesn't have to be one type. It can be
Mhm.
a mom spirit. You can mom yourself, which sounds a little bit like a curse. Go mom yourself. But I realized I could mother myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
yeah.
I totally get that. I wanted to thank Emily quick here for gifting 5 Scientology Life After a Cult memberships. Hip,
Yay!
hip,
Hip,
hooray.
hey. I love it. I love it. So is there anything else you want to click on? I know there's so many.
Yeah, let me grab I thought this was hilarious. Rabbit
Yeah.
Please says, "Oh boy, based on how I was raised, I might attract Satan's attention watching this live."
I know the feeling. I know the feeling, man. I was looking for the lightning bolts. I was
Yeah, you're committing a suppressive act in Scientology right now by nature of even Emily, who just, donated those memberships. That's considered a suppressive act in Scientology.
so
It's
according to the SP chef, which he's adorable. I freaking love him. Yes, we're all SPs here. I
Susan
love
was
it.
asking, do you think little Davy of the fake space navy believes this
Good
mess or is
question.
just laughing all the way to the bank? I don't know if he still believes it, but I think that he did. I think that he did. I think on some level. It just sometimes it's like you can't continue doing certain things unless you really
Yeah,
believe the crazy. But I don't know what version in his head he has anymore.
absolutely. We have a.
Neuro's like,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to do the super chat, but I can't.
go
Do
ahead.
you understand that? Something
Uh,
Zenu.
word jar is it German or
Jar.
Xenu? Something about Xenu? Yes.
Yes. All right, go ahead. What was the one you had?
I also wanted to bring this one up because Emily also gifted 5
Thank
Marilyn
you,
Honig
Emily.
Coffee membership.
I'll do the dance and the clap.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Emily. That's so sweet of you.
And Amber
Go ahead.
Vaness brought up that Dr. Dank had him on a lot of medicine at the end. So L. Ron Hubbard, Dr. Dank was L. Ron Hubbard's physician, who also happened to be the doctor who I saw when I had a miscarriage before I actually had my daughter.
Oh,
Yeah, did have him on multiple types of medication.
wow.
And Blow Drill saying high demand religious organizations weaponize control. That is
Absolutely.
exactly it. High demand organizations, relationships. One of the best gifts, like what I try to give my friends, and always hope that if I ever need that one day, that I can get that back. Is I try to let people know that if you need to make a change in a schedule or cancel a lunch, that's all you got to say. You don't even need to tell me why. Could be because you
Right.
just don't feel like leaving the house today. That
Right.
is okay. Like I grew up and in the Sea Org experienced such control over my
Yeah.
time and what I
Yeah.
had to do. And it's not limited to Scientology either. I think everybody, this is always like I have to. And sometimes
Yep.
it sounds fun, but then you don't really want to. I think we should give each other what I now understand because of my friends never in Scientology. It's just grace, giving them the grace of like, hey,
Hmm.
it's okay to change your mind. It's okay if you're not feeling up to it. If you need to take, if you need some downtime for a mental health break, it's
Hmm.
also, I think, generational. We're more accepting of that now and more understanding of what our mental health needs are.
Right.
Whereas when I was growing up, even outside of Scientology, that wasn't a thing.
Right. And I think it's a cult mentality too. I had it as well. It's this urgency, you were always on high alert. And I think that's why, I probably developed a autoimmune disease because just having, always being in that state of like being wound tight and
Yeah.
having to do this, do that, and
Oh
but
yeah. I
it's
don't
funny
know what
now. I'm just like, whatever,
Yeah, I know. And I think that's where the freedom is. You realize like there's so
Yeah,
much that we were never even meant to control. So just
exactly.
like
Yeah.
whatever, I can only control. And when I stopped drinking, which I think has been almost like 8 years now, that was part of it, right? Because it's what you can control and
Yeah.
recognizing what you cannot control. And there is such freedom in looking at something and realizing it. Well, I can't really control that. Like, it's going to rain today. I had other plans.
Right.
Oh, well, guess it's going to be a cozy movie day or whatever it is,
Yeah,
where you
right.
can just kind of roll with it. You save yourself so much stress, but especially in a cult, a high control group, or even a
Yeah.
bad family situation, you are kept in that fight or flight. And that's how the control is maintained, because you start believing that if I don't control every little thing, this person's going to fly off the handle. So you're
Right.
trying to prevent that. If you're the child of an alcoholic growing up,
Yeah.
or somebody who struggled with any type of addiction, you are constantly trying to control things out of your control because that's all you can do. And you just want to create a safe environment, and you don't want anything embarrassing to happen. So you
Yeah.
overcompensate that way. And when you grow up that way, and that's why I think so many people relate to Scientology, because the outcome is the same. It's the
Mhm.
same, the fight or flight, the
Yep.
autoimmune disease. It's
Yeah.
all, the result is the same.
Yeah. And I think having children and becoming a mom really broke me of that, because you can't control your kids, and
Yeah.
I shouldn't, and I don't want to, right? But and I wanted to have a different experience, my kids to have a different experience than I did. So now I'm just like, listen, I love you no matter what. I never really knew what unconditional love was,
Yeah.
and I try to be low maintenance friend, a low maintenance mom. It's just yeah, because people are gonna do what they do, right?
Yeah, and isn't it
So
funny? It's always been funny to me that, like, for me, leaving Scientology and this idea of taking your control back and taking your power back, for me, it was a lot of letting go of it, letting go of this
mhm,
idea that I really need to control anything except myself, because that's the only thing I can control. And even then, it's a task at times, right?
yeah,
You can organize, you can do your best in situations, but that's a lie also dictated in Scientology, that you need to be in control of even other people. That's why they do drills in Scientology where you physically move a person's body around. You tell them what to do. There is administrative training in Scientology. They're called admin training routines, just like where you do bull baiting and you sit there
mhm,
staring at each other for 2 hours and then you say things to get a reaction over and over again until they stop. There's administrative training where you'll have, like, say, 4 people sitting at a table, and the coach, say I'm the student, the coach will tell me, oh, no, no, no. As the student, I'm telling one of those people, like, hey, Bob, tell Mary to hand that pen to Joe, or like whatever it is. You're getting them to execute a command and carry it through. And
mhm.
they'll, get distracted. Basically, it's parenting. No, I said, you need to get your room cleaned up. Yeah, but la 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 la. Okay, you
Right,
need to get your room cleaned up. It's really just that. But the idea that Scientologists start to have is that you have to control other people, because that's what's
mhm,
done to them when they're in the hands of Scientology.
right, right. Yeah, and we had, similarities to it. It was more like you submit to discipline,
Mm,
so
yes,
you
choice.
literally had their hands laid on you. They love to lay hands on you. Ugh.
Ew, I would hate that.
Yes. Do you mind if I put this up?
Not at
Do
all.
you know our friend Bianca? This is a Scientology rundown. This is Bianca. She's a second gem, was born into Scientology. And I did a video with her on Saturday, and she actually told her whole story to, sorry, I'm plugging your channel here, Bianca, but
That's great.
she's a wonderful person. And her mom is actually still in Scientology,
Ugh.
works as a waitress, almost 80 years old, at the Sandcastle.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and Bianca lives in Stockholm, Sweden, and she actually told her whole story to Kelly Copter a few months ago.
Okay.
So, yeah. So
Oh.
so Bianca, meet
Hi,
meet Natalie.
Bianca.
Natalie, meet Bian she's wonderful. You guys should definitely talk.
Yeah,
Yes.
always trying to
So,
achieve perfection. Classic cult. In Scientology, it's being at cause. Exactly. In some
mhm.
others, it's being pure. Totally. And
It
then you
makes
can
sense, yeah.
admit, right? Like, if you had no control or you didn't control that situation, you don't want to admit that in Scientology. You don't want to admit that even in other cults
Mhm.
or even other situations, I think. Whereas there's such, like, I've been really trying to practice the beauty of just in that letting go, and like, even like, my kids are grown. And Tony might ask me something about one of my kids and I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, what do you mean you don't know? Like, you didn't ask about that? I'm like, why would I? They're 30.
Right.
At this point,
Yeah.
I go off the assumption that everything is fine until you tell me otherwise, or
Right.
I
Right.
actually see it. But it's, but his kids are younger. It's that same thing, like when you raise a child, there's a point where you have to start letting go, and you let go more and more because they can do it now. And
Right.
that's the trap we get into in high control groups, is you're convinced that you can't do this on your own,
Right.
that you can't fly the coop and succeed. In fact, in Scientology, they tell you, oh, you're only going to be able to like ever work fast food. They tell you what an a-hole and
Mhm.
dumb butt you are. And you're like, am I that horrible? Because you pretty much raised me and spent all this time. And
Right.
I've had all this training. So if that's the case, and I'm still a degraded being, as Owen Hubbard would say, because I left the Sea Organization, then that's not a good look for you.
Right, but
It
if you don't
doesn't
need
matter
them
for me.
anymore,
Yeah,
then they can't keep controlling you. So
yeah,
they always have to. And in my cult too, it was like you're never good enough. You're always having to strive.
yeah,
That
exactly.
sense of judgment and condemnation and all that. It's so similar, just different words. It's
Oh,
just
totally, totally.
crazy.
And I felt that way with my kids at times, like in recognizing that I need to let them do whatever it is and handle it. If they need help or they come to me, and as they get older, it's just they all, you don't have to carry them everywhere. They start walking, and then next thing you know, they're going to the bus for the school bus by themselves. But the whole
Mhm.
idea, my whole parenting intention was to raise children to be these adults, these individuals who could provide whatever they needed,
They
whether it
need
was
right.
something or happiness, that
Mhm.
you can do it. It comes from you, because if you can't be happy by yourself, you're never going to be happy with other people. Because
Absolutely.
even the best of people, there's something they eventually do that pisses you off. Even being with ourselves. Sometime I annoy
Right.
myself at times.
Me too. I have nobody to blame on that one. That's awesome. Oh, you've got another member, that which share.
That would share. Hey, I don't recognize your name. Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you. Hip, hip,
Thank you.
hooray. Come
Yay.
visit. And let me know if
Yes.
you do witchy stuff, because I am obsessed like with learning about like all the different things that people do, whether it's different religions, but also I've met people in like, I think crystals are really beautiful. And
Mhm.
I put together my own little apothecary where I could make my own like lotions and lip balm. So I really got into learning about like herbs and different things. I haven't done it in forever though, because life, but I'm
Life,
always
yeah.
fascinated by learning about it.
Well, if you ever come to the Northeast, I live stone's throw from Massachusetts. You just hop on the pike and go to Salem,
Mhm.
Massachusetts.
Yeah,
I
I'm
actually
curious.
was born near there. So yeah,
They get
the
such a
the
bum
witch.
rap because of
Yeah.
when you watch movies and the negative connotations with witchcraft, whereas
No.
what very, 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 very little I understand and I've read about it in it, because as I was studying herbs, some books that are actually more well, I don't think they call it witchcraft. What do they call it? Like Wiccan? Or like
Right.
even like herbal
Yeah.
medicine, you realize like you're really just
Pagan.
putting
Yeah.
your intention into something. It's a representation of that. That's really all a spell is. It's not, I don't think it's the words and stuff itself. But I wondered, like in that culture, do they have like, does it get culty? Does it, because you have
Yeah.
you never, it's there's so many, is can you have an organization, group, or
I think
religion?
anything could get culty. Like look at the yoga cults.
Yeah. Yeah,
There's
you can
some.
take anything too far. There could be
Yeah, that's
a
the
Dr.
thing.
Pepper cult.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So one question I was wondering about this too is the implant station. I don't really know a lot about purgatory because that's not something that was part of my experience. I think
Oh.
my Catholic friends talked about that where they had to pray their relatives out of purgatory and into heaven.
Oh, that's a lot
So
of
I
work.
wonder if it is sounds a little bit similar because even after you die, you're still not where you're supposed to
Yeah.
be, you
Well, the
know?
implant stations we have no control of. The Scientology belief is that if you don't do enough Scientology in this lifetime, you will be a victim of the implant station, and you will have your memory wiped, and then you will just be returned to live another lifetime and hope that, you get in with the Scientology family.
And who's in charge of all this? We don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know
Who
who's running the
decides?
implant stations. That was a thing too. I was always like, well, who's
Did you
doing
make
it?
friends with them?
Yeah, and that's why I think I'm so fascinated by, like, I've been out of Scientology for 14 years, and in many ways, I feel like I have just arrived to the planet 14 years ago, and I've spent the first 10 just figuring my crap out just to survive, and now I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay, what else is there? What's everybody been doing? What are you doing? What are you studying? Tell me about that."
Well,
And I'm
whatever you have
so
to ask about
curious.
that as far as the implants and I think the answer is it's not real.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's kind of the point. But again, there's that similarity of
Yes.
purgatory, implant station. It's like going
Yes.
back in history and looking at even with the Egyptians, and you look at their writings and go, well, that looks like an alien ship, and that could be an alien,
Yeah.
and were there aliens or weren't there? And then you go and Christianity, and you have with the story of Mary and Jesus, and that's not supposed to be possible, but that happened. That's a belief for a lot of people.
It
So
is. Yeah.
who's to say? That was kind of the thing, how I accepted even the Zenu story when I was in Scientology, is I was just someone who at that point was like, well, there are so many different types of beliefs in the world, and things that people I really respect believe that I don't quite see how that could happen, but I really respect them and they believe it. So who's to say? Why is
Maybe
it I
right?
think I know, and what makes me so special that
Right.
I have
Maybe
all
there's
the
so
answers?
different versions, like
Yeah.
pieces that actually is the truth, but we don't really know. I mean, I don't think anybody can know for sure, but if they have faith, that's great. My husband has a belief. He abandoned all the cult beliefs and all that, but
Mhm.
he's really interested in near-death experiences. Never had one, but he's been studying them and listening to hundreds and hundreds of accounts. And he said, even there's even some things in the Bible that kind of sound a little bit like near-death experiences, being caught into third heaven or something. So he's like,
Mhm.
maybe there's something to that, you
Yeah.
know? You
And
never
maybe
know.
it's even like what you believe is what happens because that's what your reality is. And if on earth we see everything through our own lens, and to us, like I could be having a great day, somebody could be
Mhm,
having a horrible day. It is the same day. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, but
mhm.
there's such different experiences. I think it can be the same thing. Cajun Mama, thank you so much for that. I love hike in nature and just completed a 3 week. So I think you're saying you just spent 3 weeks in nature. Yeah, that's my
Nice.
very recent where I'm like, whoa, I need to get back outside again.
Mhm. Yeah, you're getting spring fever, summer fever. So,
Mhm.
all right. Well, this was awesome. I mean, I hope we can
Oh,
do some more
totally.
subjects.
Totally. Even Nancy's back there saying, like, I think you two could talk for 2 years.
Well, yeah, anytime you want to come and visit the dung heap or vice versa.
Yeah, I am all up for a visit to the dung heap. So by all means.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. And
Yeah,
yeah, if we
thank
can come
you.
up with another subject and do some more deep dives, I would love that. I would love that. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And anybody on my channel, you know how to reach Marilyn. You can find her right here at Coffee Crafts and no, Coffee Cults and Crafts,
yes.
right?
So
Coffee
how
Cults.
you can remember it is coffee first, right?
Yeah,
Always coffee
yeah,
first, and then a cult sandwich, and
yeah.
then crafts because crafts.
Okay, there we go. Coffee Cults and
All
Crafts.
right. All right, everyone, have a great day. Have a nice cult-free day.
That's right.
All right, bye. Till next time. Zenu, Marlene, everybody partake. Cheers. This is good coffee. This is why, my hubby makes the coffee.